Okay, welcome back. We're going to pick up where we left off at example 5. This is section 9.1. So we're using the law of sines, remember, and we're looking at figuring out if there's 1, 2, or no triangles based on the information here for the side-side angle problems. So for example 5, we would put angle B on the corner, which is 28 degrees. And then side B, which is the side opposite that would be this side in question. Okay, and then the other side given to you, remember, would be over here. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out the value of H. So remember, H equals the hypotenuse, which is 18, times the sine of 28 degrees. Okay, so we're going to put that in our calculator, and that ends up to give us H is 8.45. All right, so because 10 is bigger than 8.45, then that means we have 1 or 2 triangles. So the way that we know, remember, is to look at this side, and because 10 is between 18 and 8, right, that's between those, then that means we're going to end up with 2 triangles. Okay, so what that means is we can have this side over here, side B, will come down here. Okay, so we'll call that, this would be A because that's side A, and then this would be C up here, right? So that's our first triangle. So we're going to find that information first, and then we'll look at our second triangle, which would be, I'm not going to draw it yet, but that would be if this side B over here came this way. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just solve this triangle like we normally would. Okay, and work this out. All right, so we're going to start by finding angle A. We have our 2 sides that are the good ratio there, so we're going to use the sine of B over B equals the sine of A over A. We're going to substitute in those values, so the sine of 28 over 10 equals the sine of angle A over side A, which was 18. All right, so we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to do 10 sine of A equals 18 sine of 28. We're going to divide both sides by 10. Okay. And then we're going to work that out, which will be the sine of A. So that gives us 0.8450. So remember, that's equal to the sine of A. So now you're going to take the inverse of that. Okay. Which will give us A. So the inverse sine of 0.8450 is 57.68 degrees. All right, so that's angle A for the first triangle, 57.68. Okay. All right, so now what's left, remember, is we now have to find angle C, which we can find by just subtracting those 2 from 180. I'm going to draw a line here, because this is going to be the work for our second triangle. We need to leave a little space for that. All right, so now we're going to come up here, and we're going to find angle C, which would be 180 minus 28 minus 57.68, right? So just subtract, right, these 2 angles from 180, and that gives us 94.32. All right, last thing we have to do is find side C, little c. So I'm going to use the sine of B over B equals the sine of C over C. Fill in our numbers. So the sine of 28 over 10 equals the sine of 94.32 over C. Cross multiply. So we get C times the sine of 28, 10 times the sine of 94.32, divide by the sine of 28, put that in your calculator, so 10 times the sine of 94.32, divide that by the sine of 28, you should end up with 21.24 for side C. Okay. All right, so there are your sides and angles for that triangle. So now, I just want to remind you, so now we're going to take B, here's side A, and instead of this being side 10 over here, which we just found, we're going to drop it this way. Okay, so I'm going to call this angle A prime and this C prime, okay, which would make this side little c prime. So I now have to find A prime, C prime, both C primes, okay. So remember the rules. These two angles are the same because this is an isosceles triangle. So if this angle was 57.68, this angle is 57.8. We're looking for this A prime, right? We're going to make this triangle now. So A prime would be 180 minus 57.68. These two have to add up to be 180. That's a straight line. So that gives us A prime as 122.32. So now that's that angle right there. So now to find C prime, we would add these two angles or subtract these two angles from 180. So C prime would be 180 minus 122.32 minus, this is still 28. So that gives you C prime, which is 29.68. All right, so there's our two angles, new angles. So the last thing we have to do is find the C prime based on this triangle. So again, I would do the sine of B over B equals the sine of C prime over C prime. Now B didn't change any. Those sides don't change, but what the other sides do. Okay. Well, this is still 10 also, right? That didn't change. All right, so just substitute in your numbers. Sine of 28 over 10 equals the sine of 29.68 over C prime. Cross multiply. I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to do C prime equals the sine of 10 times the sine of 29.68 over the sine of 28. So 10 there. Right. 10 times the sine, and that will give you, for C prime, 10.55. Okay. All right. So there were your three cases for side-side angle. So everything revolves around where this side falls between H and A, or whatever the two sides are, okay? So again, keep that angle given to you in the bottom right so that you're always looking at the same picture. And then just make sure you label your angles and sides correctly, okay? These take a little bit of work to figure out how many, but again, you only have to do that for side-side angle. Okay. All right, so now we're going to look at a couple of application problems. Okay. All right, so this one says to determine the width of a river, forestry workers place markers on opposite sides of the river at points A and B. All right, so here's the river. So they're trying to figure out how wide it is. So they're going to put a marker here. I'm going to call this one B so I have a little bit more room. So let's call that A and that B. Okay. So they're going to measure, but they can't get across the river to measure that. So they put a third marker 200 feet away from point A. We'll call that C. So not going to be a right triangle, so just somewhere down here will be point C. And they know they can measure that because they can walk that out, so that's 200 feet. Okay, we are to find, well, let's see what else we have. All right, so now they're giving us some measures, so let's make this triangle. Okay, so it's not a right triangle, so they're telling us that if the angle in triangle ABC at point C is 51 degrees, so that's this angle right there, 51. Okay, and if the angle in this triangle at point A is 110, there's angle A, okay, then determine the width of the river rounded to the nearest tenth of a foot. So we're looking for side C. That's a piece that we need, the width of the river. All right, so we need a side and the angle opposite. So we're going to use B, angle B and side B. So we're going to add those two up, subtract from 180. So we got to do B first, which is 180 minus 110 minus 51. So angle B is going to be 19 degrees. All right, it's not what we're looking for, but we need that in order to figure out side C. So we're going to do the sine of B over B equals the sine of C over C. All right, so fill in our numbers. Sine of 19 degrees over 200 equals the sine of 51 degrees over C. So we're going to cross multiply. So C times the sine of 19 equals 200 times the sine of 51. Divide by the sine of 19. See what that gets you in your calculator. Okay. So we're going to do 200 sine of 51. And we're going to divide that by the sine of 19. 477 point, said round to the nearest tenth, so 0.4. Okay. And again, that seems accurate because side angle B was the smallest, so this should be bigger than 200, and it was. And then if we had to find side A, that should be the biggest side. Okay? All right, last problem. Jack is on one side of a 200-foot wide canyon, and Jill is on the other. All right, so they're on the top. So here's the ground. So here's a canyon. So Jack is up here, Jill is up here, and this canyon is 200. Okay? All right, they both see a trail guide at the bottom of the canyon. So here's the trail guide. Trail guide, he's down here. All right, so Jack sees the trail guide at an angle of depression of 60 degrees. So remember, angles of depression are from the horizontal looking down. So Jack is looking down this way. So his angle of depression is 60. Jill looks from her horizontal line down. So her angle is 51 degrees. And we are to find how far is Jack from the trail guide and how far is Jill from the trail guide. So we're looking for these two measurements. So this angle, if I add these two up and subtract from 180, that gives me 69. So let's label these with the smallest being A, and then B, and then let this be angle C down here. Trail guide is C. Okay? That means this is side A, and this is side B, and that would be side C, which we already know is 200, right? That distance is 200. Okay, so let's start by finding side A first. So we're going to use C as our piece that we know both. So sine of C over C, and then we'll do the sine of A over A. So that's the sine of 69 degrees over 200, and that equals the sine of 51 degrees over side A. So this is Jill. I'm doing these backwards, I guess. First they asked for Jack, so I'm actually doing Jill first, right? That's the smaller one. All right, so cross multiply, and I'm going to divide all in one step. So I'm going to do 200 times the sine of 51, and I'm going to divide that by the sine of 69, just saving myself a step there. Okay, so A, the distance that, oh, that is Jack, I'm sorry. You guys are looking at that? I didn't look very well. Jack is side A. Okay, I was thinking Jill is angle A, but Jack is the distance of side A, right? All right, so this is Jack first. All right, so put that in your calculator. 200 sine of 51 times, or I'm sorry, divided by the sine of 69. So he is 166 point, and we're rounding, does it say? Doesn't really say it around, so let's just go tenths, so 0.5. Okay, so that's Jack's distance away. And then unfortunately, there's no way to solve for Jill. You gotta do the same thing for side B. Remember, this is not a right triangle, so you can't do the Pythagorean theorem. So to find Jill, we're going to still use the sine of C over C, and this time we're going to do the sine of B over B. All right, so we have the sine of 69 degrees over 200, sine of 60 over B. So B is going to equal 200 times the sine of 60 over the sine of 69. So that will give us 200 sine of 60 divided by the sine of 69, 185.5. So that's her distance away. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. All right. So law of sines. Remember when you will need those. So always have to have at least two angles in order to use the law of sines, except for that ambiguous case of side-side angle. That one you can still use the law of sines, but you have to know whether you have no triangle 1 or 2 first before you begin. Okay? All right. That does it for section 9.1. So do your homework. Let me know if you have any questions before the test rolls around, okay? All right. See you next time.